Okay, so the purpose of this Zoom is really to update on what's happening with the landlord and tenant situation. Obviously, when the government came out with a few pointers around, not being able to evict tenants for 6 months, that all sounded good, but then there's a whole lot of ramifications from that. Consequently, the REIQ, or the Real Estate Institute of Queensland, through its members, put out a big campaign to just get that altered slightly so it was fair for both the tenant and the landlord. And you might have seen from your property managers sending you through links to sign up and send an email to the Premier. That's worked, and they've come back with a few little changes, which I think are pretty good actually. It works out pretty fair for everyone. It means that those in need can get the help they require, but it also means that those trying to take advantage of the situation can't do so quite as easily. So we've put together a bit of an update on this. So I'll pass it over to Doug now, who can take it away.
Awesome, thanks for that, Scott. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen, and we'll show you some of the slides that we've put together for this today. Okay, so hopefully that's coming on all right. So the first big change with what the REIQ was able to achieve with the Everyone Matters campaign was getting a minimum financial hardship requirement or a threshold test, so that not everyone can just ask for a rent reduction. What the previous rules allowed for was anyone really could go to their landlord and ask for a rent reduction. And it was never the intention that would be the case. It was really always intended for people that are suffering from a result of COVID-19. So now they put in some minimum requirements. So there's two main elements with that surrounding income. So the first test is whether their income has reduced by 25% or more as a direct result of COVID-19, or whether the current rent amount exceeds 30% of their current income, and therefore the tenants cannot afford to pay the rent. So that's that. Tenants are now also required to provide the same level of proof. So previously it wasn't required. Now, just like as in applying for a new rental property, you have to give pay slips and certain statements to the property manager. That's the same case now with proving that you have been affected by COVID-19. Next point is about rent negotiation. So now there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of the property manager, the landlord, and the tenant to be able to come to their own agreement about the level of rent reduction, whether it's for a period of time or whether it's a permanent rent reduction, and whether the rent that has been missed out on being paid will be paid back at a later date. So for example, rent's at $500 per week. They've asked for a rent reduction to $450 per week, with the understanding that the stuff that hasn't been paid will be paid back later when everything returns back to normal. That could be an arrangement, or it could be an arrangement where they say, no, we'll just leave it at $450 now for the remainder of the lease. That's up to the landlord and the property manager and the tenant to decide together. If they can't decide, now that will be referred to the RTA for the mandatory conciliation. And basically, the RTA will go and explore the financial situation of the tenant and line that up with the requests been made to the landlord, and just try to come to as fair as possible result. So I just got here a little chart. So the tenant's requesting a rental reduction. They need to provide the supporting evidence, and it's either three outcomes: an agreement's made between the parties, or the tenant may break the lease under regular conditions if it's maybe not due to COVID-19, or they need to go to mandatory conciliation with the RTA. Another big thing was the entry conditions for reasons why a property manager or others could enter the property. Previously, the tenant was able to deny any access other than emergency repairs, which puts out of the loop routine inspections and normal statutory checks like smoke alarms. So those have been relaxed. The property managers can now continue to carry out routine inspections. A lot of them have been doing them via Zoom. I know I've done one via Zoom, which was interesting. So the tenant is required to participate in that if that's required. Otherwise, they can still do the physical inspections. They just need to adhere to social distancing and hygiene rules. So the common practice is for the tenant to leave the property for a number of time, 20 minutes, and then the property manager will come in. They won't touch anything. They'll just do their inspection and then leave. So that way there's less interaction as possible. So for the smoke alarms and any other things that are statutory, they can also continue as well. And it is all subject to whether the tenant is self-isolating. Of course, if someone has coronavirus symptoms or has the disease itself, then that won't be required. Break leases. This is a big one too. So tenants were previously allowed to break lease with only 1 week's notice, and you can see how that could put out a landlord quite quickly. So now it's restricted to only tenants who are experiencing extreme financial hardship. They will be allowed to break a lease of 1 week's notice, providing they have a 75% or more reduction of income, and also a savings account of less than $5,000. So those two components need to be combined in order for them to break lease. Otherwise, it's just subject to normal break lease conditions, which is up to you and your landlord. Lastly, the eviction moratorium. So previously, the tenant had the right to request an additional 6-month lease if it was expiring. Now, any fixed term tenancies are automatically renewed until the 30th of September. Parties can negotiate to end the lease a bit earlier if they come to a mutual agreement. And the requirement for landlords to offer an additional 6 months is no longer required. So it's a lot more flexible. However, for most of our clients, if you've got good tenants in place, you probably want to keep them, and it's just about renewing leases, and that can occur as per normal. So everything can still just run as it should be doing. Now, a few of our clients, especially ones that have been considering getting into an additional rental property or an additional investment property, have been asking about the rental market and how it's been going. So we've gotten a statement here from Joel from Image Property, who does manage quite a lot of our client properties. Image Property do a fantastic job at getting good quality tenants at a good price and taking good care of the property for the long term. So his statement was really saying that they're not actually having troubles with leasing properties, except for those that were geared directly for international students. And for obvious reasons, that's difficult. Travel overseas right now is very limited. They've also had a few issues around the real high end of the property market. It's taking a bit longer for those to go through, or they might be having to reduce the rent a little bit on that. They're still able to lease properties because they can do the virtual walkthroughs, they can conduct private inspections. So the rental game still is able to carry on fairly normally, just adhering to the new rules that's in place. What I've done here, this will be available. I'll send this out as well in the email for the link to rewatch this and also to access these slides. But this virtual property link here, you can have a look at what a virtual property looks like. Basically this can be done for any property. Across to the right hand side, just got some statistics as well that Image have provided for us. So the teal blue is, or the Wealth Med blue is Image Property, their vacancy rate, and that at the moment is at 0.25%, I believe. Compared to the Sunshine Coast vacancy rate, which is sitting about 1.4, it actually dropped in March. And then compared to the national average of 2%, you can see Sunshine Coast itself is doing better than the national average. And then Image Property as a company is doing much better than the Sunshine Coast as an average. So vacancy rates, what that shows you is if there's a rate around about the 2 to 3%, it is quite healthy. Anything lower than that, it means it's an extremely in demand area. And anything higher than 3% shows that there's too much supply, and that can mean waiting longer for a tenant or reduced rental income. Now, the average days on the market it's taking for a property to be leased is 20. So that's another good impact, a good statistic as well. It's not taking ages to rent out properties. They are finding tenants quite quickly. It is always subject to what's available at the market at that time. Sometimes you get a little bit of an influx of properties at the same time, particularly in the newer areas. They can all come to the market at the same time. Ideally, you might be one of the only few that have come to the market, but they are still going out pretty quickly, and for the price that they've been appraising at. And lastly, the property market itself. So there's a lot of literature about this right now online and from different sources. I've taken some of this research from Cameron Kusher, who's from realestate.com, and he's seeing two different sides to this. While it is a difficult situation, you can see on the right-hand side the impacts COVID-19 has with consumer confidence, tightening the purse strings, high unemployment or unemployment on the rise, and the market slowing. While those impacts are there, he does still see that it will bounce back quickly after the coronavirus has kind of wrapped up. We've got three main points here to really consider. While the market is still in motion, it's not shut down, it's not dead, it's not completely dead. It's still going. It's just at a slower pace. A lot of people have been reducing putting the property onto the market. They might be waiting until a little bit later. The amount of auctions have also reduced as well. But a big difference is people aren't flooding the market with their properties to sell because they need the money. And that's thankfully due to the government support packages. People have been able to get increased amounts of rent assistance or job seeker or job keeper payments. And also the banks have come to the party as well with being able to defer payments for people in financial hardship. So unlike the global financial crisis, where people were desperate to sell and lots of properties came onto the market at the same time and it crashed the market, is not the case at all. There's actually less properties coming onto the market, and so it's everything keeping fairly constant in terms of pricing. Maybe a slight dip in the pricing, but at the moment things are still pretty stable. It's just a reduction in the number of sales. So this will be available to you to read through as well. And look, that's really about it when it comes to the current update with the REIQ Everyone Matters campaign. Really grateful for their efforts with the grassroots campaign to make the rules fairer for all parties involved. Of course, we want to make sure that tenants that are affected are taken care of and able to receive the assistance that they need. But also landlords, need to be taken care of as well, and their incomes need to be kept stable so we can bridge the gap and hopefully get to the other side of this pandemic and start to recover from there. I think the good thing to know is that the Queensland government responded well to the inquiries, and also that they are now actively talking with and collaborating with the stakeholders involved. So the REIQ and a number of different agencies in the state. Aside from that, Scott, do you have any other comments you'd like to wrap up with? Otherwise, that's it on my end.
No, I think it's just important that if you've got any queries or concerns, make sure you contact us. We're here to help. It's not a big scary situation really. There's, from all the property managers we've heard from so far, it's a very, very small percentage of people that are actually even asking for rent reductions, let alone any people just not paying rent. There are a couple of them out there. There's a few cases that we're aware of and are helping customers through, but just come to us if there's any queries around that. And I think if there's any questions, fire away.
We'll open the floor now to Brad. Any questions, man?
I do just have probably just a point of clarification around that, the ability for landlords to enter the property and things like that. So you said they can for those inspections and statutory reasons. Just coincidentally, I've had the termite company call up, and my property is now due to have that termite inspection carried out, which isn't a big deal, isn't probably that important except for warranty reasons. So is that one of those things that are going to be reaching that threshold that can still go ahead at the moment, or is that something that's going to get delayed because it's not essential to do right now?
No, that should be still fine to do now. So all the idea is that all the normal services, like your pest inspections, like your smoke alarms, your pool safety certificates, all that sort of thing, and routine inspections can carry on to make sure the house is safe and it's being looked after as it should be.
Yeah, and I'll say there's no reason why those inspections couldn't occur, subject to if the tenant is in self-isolation. If that was the case, then probably not. But as long as they don't, then there's no reason why those inspections can't occur.
Okay, cool. And then the other thing was on the reduction of income. So if they've had reduced income of 25%, are they just providing that evidence direct to the real estate agent to carry that out, or how is that actually sort of assessed?
Yeah, in the first instance, it's the property manager who'll deal with this. They'll have recommendations for you too. So it could just be, look, this tenant has had reduced income. They're struggling to pay the rent at the moment. They've shown me the evidence that they do have reduced income. Maybe we lower the rent by $50 or $100 a week for the next 2 months and look at it then. Part of that reduction could be that we're just going to have that rent in arrears and allow that for 2 months, and you've got to pay it back, and we'll have a payment plan of an extra $20 a week for the however many months to pay it off. That could be a reasonable way around it, and most people would probably be okay with that. You could choose to just waive the rent for a period too, but I think the important thing is to make sure that you have an agreement for a period of time, for an amount, and whatever rules are around that afterwards. And it could be a case of, look, in 2 months' time it's still going on and we need to look at other measures, but we'll deal with that at the time. Going beyond that, if you can't reach an arrangement, that's where the conciliation comes in, and that's where it'll just be determined based on the facts. So, and generally, then that doesn't mean no rent. You know, it means, okay, let's work out a plan of what can be afforded and what can't. So.
Okay, cool. Thanks. That's all I had.
Great. Well, I think if when we send this out, if anyone's got any queries, just send them in and we'll try and answer as best we can. Otherwise, thank you for joining.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Brad.